Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and Yashadev Prabhu, could you please help me with um, the sound? I don't see it. Usually it appears in the corner, but doesn't appear anymore. How to do that again? The
I can't remember, Prabhu. Some sort of audio settings.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to
Ajamil
find the
Prabhu
audio.
claims that if you set it to uh,
Yeah, I know
original
what to
sound
set it
for
to.
musicians.
Correct. Yeah, I know that. Usually it appears in the left corner, and you can just choose. And lately, just the last 2 weeks, it stopped, and I forgot the process.
Do you
Where is the
see
audio settings?
Hare
Yeah,
Krishna? Do you
Hare
see
Krishna.
up in this? Is it saying YouTube up in the left hand corner?
Yes, yes.
Okay, just go roll your cursor over that, and it should come up. Possibly
Um, yeah, it doesn't. That's the problem. Um,
not working. Do you
no.
see it? Just roll your cursor
Yeah, I
up on
did.
the left hand
I
side.
did. I did. I did. I did. I
Okay.
did, and it doesn't come up. So, um, okay, I guess I don't know what else, how else to tackle it. Oh, okay. Let's see. The microphone settings, audio settings. Ah, yes, here, original sound. Musicians on. Okay, good. Found it. Mm. So, registered devotees. Going back to the mic. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Rayana Namaskrityam Narottamam Naruchavam Devim Saraswati Vyasa Tato Jayam Udiraya Nashtaprayasva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashlake Bhakti Bhavati Naish. Teyam Sankhya Tattva Drishapan Niyate Tasmai Nama Sankhya Nidarshanayate Iti Yasmina Sankhya Visheshanama Rupa Kritauka Vivikalpiteyam Sankhya Tattva Drishapaniyate Tasmai Nama Sankhya Nidarshanayate. Word-to-word translation, Yasmin, in you, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Asankhya, innumerable. Vishesha, particular. Nama, names. Rupa, forms. Akritau, possessing bodily features. Avibhi, by great learned persons. Kalpita, imagined. Iyam, this. Shankhya, number. Yaya, by whom? Tatva, of the truth. Grisha, by knowledge. Apaniyate is extracted. Tasmai, unto him. Namaha, respectful obeisances. Sankhya Nidarshanaya, who is the revealer of this numerical knowledge. Te, unto you. Iti, thus. Translation. O my Lord, your name, form, and bodily features are expanded in countless forms. No one can determine exactly how many forms exist. Yet you yourself, in your incarnation as the learned scholar Kapila Deva, have analyzed the cosmic manifestation as containing 24 elements. Therefore, if one is interested in Sankhya philosophy, by which one can enumerate the different truths, he must hear it from you. Unfortunately, non-devotees simply count the different elements and remain ignorant of your actual form. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Philosophers and scientists have been trying to study the entire cosmic situation and have been theorizing and calculating in different ways for millions and millions of years. However, the speculative research work of a so-called scientist or philosopher is always interrupted when he dies, and the laws of nature go on without regard of his work, for his work. For billions of years, changes take place in the material creation until at last the whole universe is dissolved and remains in an unmanifested state. Constant change and destruction, bhutva bhutva praliyate, is perpetually going on in nature, yet the material scientists want to study natural laws without knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the background of nature. As Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagat viparavivatate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Now, the material creation is manifest. Eventually, it will be annihilated and remain for many millions of years in a dormant state. And finally, it will again be created. This is the law of nature. End of the proverb. The verse again, Yasmin asankhyeya visheshanama rupa kritav kavibhi kalpiteyam. Sankhya ya tatvadrisha paniyate tasmai nama sankhya nidarshanaya te iti. O my Lord, your name, form, and bodily features are expanded in countless forms. No one can determine exactly how many forms exist. Yet you yourself, in your incarnation, as the learned scholar Kapila have analyzed the cosmic manifestation as containing 24 elements. Therefore, if one is interested in Sankhya philosophy, by which one can enumerate the different truths, he must hear it from you. Unfortunately, non-devotees simply count the different elements and remain ignorant of your actual form. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayarva Gadamahyam Vadati Swapadantikam Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nevashesha Shunyavadi Pashchatyade Shatarine. Hare Krishna dear devotees, thank you for gathering today. So many of you today. And I must admit, the Sankhya philosophy is not my biggest strength. However, by your mercy and prayers, I would attempt to speak on this subject matter. But before we go there, it's so nice to just again mention that the residents of Jambudvipa, there are so many of them, and we are exposed to the prayers, are very short prayers, 3, 4, 5 verses each, and it gives us a wonderful opportunity to examine the state of consciousness of various devotees of the Lord. Of course, there are some grades of devotees, and the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj are indeed, one of the most amazing ones we can read in the chapters here, in this chapter here, and but nonetheless, once we get to the other devotees glorifying the Lord, having certain taste and rasa and the servitorship attitude, we can learn so much, even how to compose prayers, even the form of the prayers, but also, their devotion. So it's actually very inspiring. It's very purifying. It's very inspiring to read those verses. So this one is the concluding verse of the prayer to Lord Kurma, the tortoise incarnation, and it is pronounced by, what's his name? Yeah, just a second. Oh, so this, where are we? Oh, here. So it's from the Hiranmaya Varsha, this particular area, and then it's pronounced by Aryama, the chief resident of Hiranmaya Varsha. And this prayer is to glorify. It's the area where Lord Vishnu lives in the form of a tortoise, Kurma Sharira. Very beautiful prayer. All right, so now we get into the subject that I'm really bad at, but nonetheless. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that there's a constant change in destruction. Bhutva bhutva praliyate. Praliyate, the word comes from pralaya. You must have heard this word many times while reading Srila Prabhupada books, and that refers to the destruction of the universe that we live in. And we know that there's a Chaturvyuha, or 4 yugas that are changing one after the other. Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali Yuga being the shortest, 432,000 years. And so this is just a one cycle. So when there is 1,000 of those 4 yuga cycles, this equates to 1 day of Lord Brahma, or specifically, as I understand, 12 hours. Like when there's no night for the Lord Brahma, when it's a daytime. And in that day, there's 14 manus that are being created, and each manu lives for 71 of those Mahavyuhas or Chaturvyuhas, the cycles. So it's a long time. Each manu lives and rules for over 300 million years, earthly years. And so there's 2 situations when the destruction of the universe, or the manifested universe, happens. And one of them is when it's the end of actually 3 of them, sorry, there's 3. So one of them is when the night of Lord Brahma comes. So after 1 day, after those 1,000 cycles, the waters of the causal ocean raise, and they flood all the lower, mid, and even some of the higher planetary systems. Only 4 out of 14 planetary systems remain clear of water. That is Satyaloka, where Lord Brahma lives, and then there's Tapaloka, Maharloka, and Janaloka, or Tapaloka, Janaloka, Maharloka. I think that's the order. And there are beings on a higher planetary system that can even use their, not transcendental, but very sublime airplanes to actually quickly evacuate themselves to this Maharloka or Tapaloka or Janaloka, wherever they are allowed to come from lower heavenly planets to them, just so they can survive in their bodies. And so that's the day of the Brahma. Then after 100 years, there's a complete destruction, where everything goes back to the unmanifested form, which is mentioned here, when this is a material nature full cycle. So at that time, Lord Brahma, if he's a devotee, he goes back to the spiritual world. With him, all the residents, because they're his devotees and devotees of the Lord at the same time, from Satyaloka, they all go back to Godhead. The rest is going into the sleep, kind of dormant stage, where they just going back to the pores of Mahavishnu and stay in unmanifested form until the next cycle of creation happens. And then there's an exceptional situation, which happened, for example, recently, mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam in 8th canto, when there's a so before, right now we live in a Vyavasvata Manu, as we mentioned in the previous class, and Matsyavatar came to save King Satyavrata, who was in Vyavasvata Manu was in previous life Satyavrata, the king. But that happened during the reign of Chakshushaman, who is the 6th in order. So first is Swayambhuva Manu, and they go like this. And right now we live in the 7th Manu, which is Vaivasvata Manu, and he lived half of his life, approximately. So in the previous Manu was Chakshusha Manu, and so what happened? Why there's a inundation of waters and a flood that's going on? And it's the middle of a Manvantaras, of all the 14 Manvantaras. It's the middle. So that means it's still a daytime for Lord Brahma. Obviously, his 12 hours also go in hours, and so that should be just the midday. And you know how sometimes we, take prasadam at lunch, maybe a bit heavy, and we are feeling a bit dozing off and just want to, have a little pass out for a few seconds, or, a few minutes, or even an hour. So that happens sometimes to Lord Brahma. Not that from prasad, but like sometimes occasionally he may feel sleepy during the day. So just by him going into this catnapping, as they call it, a few seconds just to, a few minutes to just restore energy, just in that moment, this partial devastation also may happen. And so, the flood and everything goes in disbalance without the secondary creator being in charge. But of course, nobody can trick the Lord, or Lord is all knowing. And so Matsyavatar comes and he says to King Satyavrata, after this super wonderful exchange where he fully surrenders to King Satyavrata, saying, "Why are you throwing me back to the ocean? There are sharks. I'm so afraid. You're supposed to protect me." And so the soft-hearted king takes this little fish and puts it in a little jar, and then it grows in the jar immediately. "Oh, it's so cramped here. Can you put me in a bigger?" And then he puts it in a well, and then a lake, and then bigger reservoir, and eventually to the ocean. And again, even though it's so big now, bigger than the biggest reservoir of water, he throws into the ocean. He says, "You throw me again to those sharks." It's like, you just grew in a few seconds more than 100 yojanas. I don't understand. Who are you? It's a very sweet exchange of the Lord being dependent on the devotee. That's his eternal lila. He likes to put himself in a dependence of the devotees, pure devotees. But also in that process, the Lord starts to reveal the purpose, because he understood it's the Lord, so it means there's some business to do in the material world. And so he says, yes, in 7 days, and again, it's interesting the parallel that the Noah's Ark, same thing. The Lord said, in 7 days there will be those waters. So this knowledge transmits even through different religions and spiritual traditions, the remembrance of this big event, all of a sudden, it's supposed to be no flood. It's a flood which is not counted in the material schedule. So schedule of events, either end of the Lord, end of the day Brahma, or end of the life of Brahma. Not in the middle of the day. What's going on, So because it's an exceptional, extraordinary situation, the Lord says, okay, please take the herbs. We discussed that. Please take the herbs, the seeds, the precious animals, the rishis, and then the Lord enjoys the waves. He's always enjoying. It's surfing. The best surfer is the Lord, surfing the big waves, catching them, and enjoying. At the same time, transmitting this knowledge to King Satyavrata, who has acquired and got enlightened. Both him and the 7 sages, they got enlightened by this knowledge of absolute truth, and we could see how it didn't get lost in time as he got born again as a son of sun god Vivasvan. He became Shraddha Deva or Vaivasvata Manu. So he got higher in the material position, became from the king to the Manu, the origin of all mankind in this Manvantar. So we live under his reign. We live under his Manu Samhita right now. And he got the same knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and other knowledge of absolute truth told him by the sun god. So he restored his spiritual knowledge to where he finished in the last life. So this is wonderful. And so, but here in this specific verse, that's where I'm struggling a bit is, even I will not name you the 24 elements probably right now, but there are some people with analytical mind, and they like to calculate. They like to break down into pieces, the Mendeleev's table of chemical elements, or you just like to break down things to atoms and molecules. And although we have the knowledge in Bhagavad Gita that Atma is 1,000th of the tip of the hair, which is impossible to calculate materially. In other words, saying don't even bother. It's so small you will not be able to get to it in terms of the size. But just to give you an idea, because you like to calculate, Krishna would mention that, 1,000 of the tip of the hair, so that the scientific brains of materialistic people will say, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I understand. Because we like to measure things, either with feet or with meters, but we like to measure things. How far, how big, how that, how this, and it somehow makes us feel great when we know our height. We go to hospital, they say, what's your height? What's your weight? It's like it matters, right? If I'm 6 feet tall, 5 feet and 9 inches tall, whatever. So, but for some, it's important for them to make the stats. People like to make the statistics and measure. But it says here right in the beginning, in the verse itself, actually, that no one can determine exactly how many forms exist. Yet, you yourself, in your incarnations, learned as called Kapila have analyzed the cosmic manifestation as containing 24 elements. So we know that there's Dasha avatars, the 10 main avatars mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, but actually there's more avatars that are even mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. In a 3rd chapter of a 1st canto, it's mentioned 25 avatars. So although there's 10 Dashavatars, the 10 main ones, about which Jayadeva sings beautifully the prayer, and Nagari Krishna Brahma was during his disciplines, he was singing those Dashavatar prayers. So nice. In one prayer, you can glorify all the 10 main avatars. Beautiful. Kurma Sharira, Jayadagadesha Hare, Matsya Sharira, and so forth. There's Nrsimhadev, and like that. Buddha, Krishna, Kalki, like that, Ramachandra. And then So apologies, the internet just collapsed. We are restored. So yeah, so 25 avatars. But there's actually countless forms. Like I remember, I think Madhavananda Prabhu was saying about the a cat avatar. So those who like cats. So there was a demon, mouse demon, and so this it's actually mentioned in one of the Puranas or somewhere about the cat avatar, where the Lord is in the form of a cat and waiting for this mouse demon to, um, get off the hole to catch it and kill it or whatever. So, so there are others which we don't know, but it says that in every species of life, there is the form of the Lord is also there, the avatar that comes in that form, whatever species of life. So, because when Lord comes, it's all pure in all of his incarnations and deeds. And so we go for those 24 elements. So, of course, okay, from my memory, which may be Kali Yuga memory, not maybe, it is Kali Yuga memory, so you can correct me, but so there's unmanifested reality when the modes of material nature are in a dormant state, sleeping state. So nothing is happening. So the first thing that is manifesting, called pradhana, that's when the modes of nature start to act first. So when they start to act, then Lord, enters another element, which is time. So when the time is there, everything is set for the living entities to start to, incarnate and live their life. And we're going from those subtle first to grosser later. So first is the ahankara, the false intelligence that manifests. Then there's mind and intelligence. And this is interesting because mind is described as a mode of goodness, right? And if we think of activities of the mind as thinking, feeling, and desiring, right? That's what mind does. So how come intelligence, although we glorify the Buddhi, the intelligence so much, it's actually is described as a mode of passion? Had anybody thought about this before? Since we're in a Sankhya Kapila Deva's mode of breaking down everything into small pieces. Anyone thought about it? Why, we always say most important is intelligence because mind can, it can be the best friend, can be the worst of the enemies. So we always glorify intelligence to, set up our buddhi right in order to make the right decisions. So why is intelligence a mode of passion then, which is supposed to be lower than the mode of goodness? Yes, please. Raised hand.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Oh, there you go. The Sankhya.
Well, firstly, yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Well, firstly, it's stated by Kapila Dev that that is the creation process. So the mind mixes, well, the mode of goodness, the Kala Shakti, mix, and then they create the mind. The intelligence is created by the mixture of passion and the Kala Shakti with false ego. So there's not really given a reason why it is so, but one could surmise that intelligence gives direction and it's part of the creative potency. So because it's mostly a creative potency, it gives shape to things. So it's like the mind can, generate all sorts of things, but the intelligence decides, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. And so it's really the creative potency. And so that's why it's mostly in the mode of passion. And Lord Brahma as well, his body is made up of pure intelligence. And he's a presiding deity of the mode of passion.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. Very good answer. I heard similar explanation. There's a tinge that I would like to add to this, but it's perfectly correct. I mean, at least to my understanding, perfectly correct. So, yes, so the mind is feeling, thinking, desiring, but in order for the desire to manifest, you need a strategy, a plan, a thorough thinking. How am I achieving this desire, right? So this is a function of intelligence, because intelligence analyzes, intelligence distinguishes how to act, whether it's actually wrong or right, because the mind always wants, but intelligence can distinguish, okay, in order for me to enjoy this, actually I should wait a little longer in order for this enjoyment to be bigger or whatever, So there's a plan, a strategy, and that's an action. And so, as Nagari said, it's a creative potency, and the creation is a mode of passion. And we need it. It's not like it's not needed, but nonetheless, it's interesting just to analyze and see how it actually works. All those modes of goodness, we know that they fight with one another always. So one is packing and pulling the other and like that, but we know which one is the superior, from which foundation is best to act. So you have to be in a mode of goodness, whether action in itself is mode of passion, but if it's determined by mode of goodness, if the intelligence is in a mode of goodness and mind becomes purified, then those actions which will be with a tinge of passion, still from the platform mode of goodness, they will actually be liberating, not degrading. Okay, and then the other things, of course, are the senses and the material elements, like the ether, which is the subtle, and then again from ether goes to air, and then to fire, and then to water, and then to earth. So we can see this gradation. As Nagari said, the Lord Brahma's body is made of intelligence. So you can imagine the realm that he exists is pretty much so subtle that's why there's no suffering as such. It says like it's almost like being in a Vaikuntha planet, because on Lord Brahma's planet, Satyaloka, you don't have a material body which aching and paining and like that, because there's no hard elements there. It's mainly, intelligence, that kind of thing. Very subtle. So the higher you go, the subtler it becomes. The proportion becomes like, that's why the sun planet is considered to be a planet, a higher planet, a heavenly planet, you can say, because the bodies are made of fire there, and we don't understand it, how these bodies exist, but in this body you will not be able to exist there. That's why Srila Prabhupada was laughing at those attempts, silly attempts, to go in this body to the moon planet, or in this body to whatever planet, because our bodies are not designed to be there. If you want to do that, learn easy journey into the other planets. And then you get the technique, how to get to those places. So Sankhya philosophy, but then what's important is it says that the non-devotees simply count the different elements and remain ignorant of your actual form. You have to study it from the proper, from the Lord himself, like Kapila Dev. And Srila Prabhupada warns us in Bhagavad Gita and other places, if you read, that there are two Kapilas, right? One is a atheist Kapila, who made a completely different philosophy. You have to learn it from the proper Kapila Dev, from Kapila Dev, who is a incarnation of the Lord, a learned scholar Kapila Dev, who through this analysis engage in our analytical thinking. Sorry, we're back again. And I'm just reading while this pause was there. So yes, so instead of, as Prabhupada says, the scientists are trying to study it for millions of years, philosophers. So you can see how it's a repetitive thing. trying to explore this universe, and it's like, I like this example from the who was it? I don't remember if it was Socrates, but this elephant, right? Who you touch from different sides, and one thing, oh, elephant is like this, oh, elephant is like that. Somebody's touching the tail, somebody's touching the legs. It says elephant is like a tree. Somebody's touching the trunk, and somebody's the ear. And they all describe it differently, trying to make the puzzle work. But it will always be imperfect because we have those 4 defects as a conditioned soul. Our senses are imperfect. We have a tendency to cheat. We have imperfect senses, tendency to cheat. My memory is just getting blank right now. Yeah, well, basically, we're very much conditioned and limited. And this doesn't allow us to grasp the reality properly. The only way how we can find out the truth is to ask the source. Like the example is given in the Vedas, that you ask your mother about who your father is, and only your mother can tell you who your father is, because she isn't possessing the knowledge, right? I did use this example once in Sankirtan, and this person said, well, there's genetics and we can analyze. I said, well, this is such a wonderful way. You'll be running around the labs trying to analyze all those genetics to find out your father. Why don't you just ask? I mean, maybe it's even possible, but why don't you just ask your mother? Simple as that. So simple. And then see how the materialistic mind works. We want to find out the truth without going to the source. We would like to explore it ourselves with our limited brains and imperfect senses. Falling into the illusion, that's the third one, and then eventually we'll be cheating others, because we will not know what's the absolute reality. So we'll be cheating. This will be a business of even unwillingly, but because we don't possess the perfect knowledge, we'll be cheating. So we have to get the proper knowledge, Shabda Brahma. And the Vedas are so perfect. They are called Fruti. They are not the upper share, they're out of this world, knowledge that is given by the Lord to the creator of the universe, to Lord Brahma, and then down through the Guru Parampara, down to us. And of course, 5,000 years ago, Dvaipayan Vyasa has written down and segmented it for us, because he knew that in Kali Yuga, we will not be able even to grasp what the previous generation did, the previous human beings in the previous age, because our memory gets shorter, our lifespan gets shorter, there's stresses and diseases and so many distractions, and we just cannot, we're not so intelligent, we just have to admit that. And if scientists say, no, we're so intelligent, then please study the Vedas, and tell us what you have understood. But you have to study properly also, under the guidance of a spiritual master. It's not just academic knowledge. But even academically, even from mundane perspective, at least scientists today realize that this is not an ordinary situation. Even UNESCO is saying that we have to protect the Vedas. UNESCO is usually pointing out something that is very unique and outstanding in this material world. So the Rig Veda is accounting at least 15,000 years of how scientists have established its existence. So, by just that, it's the oldest scripture existing on earth. So it puts some little credits to us also, because we deal with scientists and have to have some explanations. We have lots of information for them to study if they wish to. So that's a proper study. You examine something, you hear something from the source, and then you retract this information and just reconfirm it from what you actually observe and say, yes, see, it works. Like, for example, Y was asking me the other day about the 108 number, why it's so sacred and so forth. And it's interesting because, there's so many interesting facts about 108 number. You can just Google it. One of them is, the distance between the Earth and Sun is 108 times of its diameter of the Sun. That's how the distance is to the Earth. And same with the Moon. So this number is kind of magical. There's 54 alphabet letters since we're doing this numbering and measuring and segmenting. So I'm using those examples today. There's 54 alphabet letters in a Devanagari, in a Sanskrit. And each of them has masculine and feminine origin, so 54 times 2 is 108. And there's many, many, many more of those which describe this number, not just in, by the way, not just in a Vedic cosmology or Vedic spiritual tradition, but also in, it's mentioned in Christianity. There's the Mayan pyramids that has 108 feet and things like that. So it's like in a Chinese tradition, there's also, so in Buddhist tradition, so there's like it's spread, and the traces of this sacred number is coming from different various sources. It's quite interesting. So yeah, so for those who like to count and measure, you can study Sankhya philosophy. You can measure, you can recount, you can understand to details, and it brings some satisfaction to those inclined in this way. And eventually it leads to the same purpose, the same destination, which is Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at one point you will admit that there's just innumerable incarnations. I cannot count them, even if I like to. And through devotional service, the taste for actual serving the Lord and loving the Lord will be so strong that you will forget about all the counting, whatever the counting is. You will put the logic aside. The logic is there in Shastra, but it will not become, at some point, you will see that they acting illogically, because love and logic is a different, it's a opposite, almost opposite, sometimes quite often opposite things. And so, because the existence of the Goloka Vrindavana especially exists on the pure loving exchanges, which are illogical sometimes completely. So I'll give you one example of Yashoda Mai, Yashoda in the spiritual world. When she puts Krishna to rest, she sees the red markings on his body, and she's complaining that those girls didn't do the good work in bathing him. They could not take this clay off him, the Yamuna's clay. Hare Krishna, we apologize. I don't know how to fix this. Our internet in Gita Nagari is very special. All right, so we'll wrap up here. And so I was finishing on the point that the love, pure love, is illogical. You know, Mother Yashoda, Krishna already grew up, and Nanda Maharaj wants to build him a new room, so he starts to live separately. And she thinks, he just got born. You know, he's so dependent on me. You know, because it's a completely blinding love. Even Nanda Maharaj sometimes has to acknowledge, Mother Yashoda, I think something is wrong with your memory. You know, it's just something is going on here. It's you have to understand. You know, you can see he grew, and she has to acknowledge like that. So the love blinds us in material world, right? It's a very dangerous situation. Prahlad Maharaj describes it as a extremely dangerous situation when we fall in love in imperfect relationship for a decade before we kind of this whole thing passes. So, and same in a spiritual world, the love blinds also, but it's a complete perfection. Right. Well, stop here. Okay. Hopefully, comments rather than questions on Sankhya or other points mentioned in this verse, please. Nagari, you have your hand raised, but maybe it's from the. Yes. Anyone would like to add something? Correct. Before the internet.
Harbo
What was it called?
Prabhu, Harbo,
Hare Krishna, Rajan.
Nitagoranga, Hari Hari. I don't want to add anything because it was just so amazing. I'm just so inspired by your bravery, you know, and your humility for talking about this Shankya philosophy and explaining so nicely and ending with, you know, this deep love of what we're all endeavoring to engage in. So I just wanted to thank you so much. Yeah, for your class. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajlina. Always supporting and encouraging us. Anybody else? Sankhya brains? All right. Well, for those who like to segment things, since we're waiting till the beaches will open in a few minutes, I was recently trying to understand more about the Vedas, and I listened to His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj giving an interview a few years ago, and there were a few questions about the Vedas that he was answering. So the one I liked is, you know, sometimes it says about Shruti and Smriti. Right? So Shruti we described as the Vedas that came and were orally transmitted from the source down to the different sages, starting with the Lord Brahma. But then Smriti, so what then Smriti is what? The question was like, is Smriti then something that human being has created? So the answer was satisfying to me because he said, well, it's written, for example, it's written by a human being, but it's the same Shruti that has been just analyzed or thought of about. And so, because Shruti is the way you receive it is within the heart, and it's like almost like a transcendental television that you get the images, not just the words with those words, because the words are perfect vibration. That's another interesting part about Sanskrit languages, because it's perfect vibration. With that vibration, you get the meaning. Because otherwise, you know, there's so many ways to say one word in Sanskrit. So I was telling some animal, you can say like 50 different words. Like this. So Sanskrit is really, really amazing. And so Smriti is basically, for me, that has been different before that I have understood it a bit more, that Smriti is something that rishis and saints and different sages thought about and written it down as a matter of their realization. But it's actually not different to Shruti in one sense, right? Because they're pure-hearted, and we're talking about the sages of that caliber. So just another interesting insight. I heard the conch, so Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sankhya philosophy ki jai, Kapila Deva ki jai. All the rest is above. Thank you very much. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charan. Krishna Prabhupada.